Rasmus Lerdorf. He's the guy that invented PHP, and they used like his own key to get in.
So someone protect the guy that invented Python real quick. Let's lock his keys up. Welcome to another episode of Bourbon and Data Breaches, where we cover the 5 most interesting data breaches from this last week and one of our favorite bourbons. I'm Steve.
Howdy, I'm Shu.
Nikki.
Well, Nikki, what do you have for us this week?
First topic is coming from Wired. Headline reads, a SpaceX engineer's dark web insider trading sparks an SEC first. James Jones, 33-year-old engineer, pled guilty to conspiracy to commit security fraud. Essentially, what he did was he would go onto the dark web. He would purchase names, addresses, birthdays, social security numbers. He would start bank accounts. And then with those accounts, he would jump into the trading game and make trades based on insider information that he got from others. And everything was going swimmingly until he had actually sold information to an undercover FBI agent. But the thing is, I saw the number that he had made so far with Bitcoin, and it was like, the listed number was pretty low. It was like $37,000 in Bitcoin, and he's about to get 5 years. Pretty bad deal. What do you guys think?
Yeah, how did he steal identities, create fake bank accounts, trade on insider information, and only net $37,000? That seems odd.
The biggest interesting thing I found out of this article was that this was the jurisdiction, that this is the SEC's first foray into the dark web. So whether they'll stick with this or whether they're just trying to make an example out of this guy to scare off others, we don't know. We'll just have to wait and see.
And it seems like if you had insider information, that it's very interesting to see the SEC start to patrol company valuations for around cyber. Although, 2020 was the worst year for breaches on record. And if we can say that the stock price is going to fall in confluence with the breach, then that would have been an interesting year to have been paying attention to that.
I think moral of the story is don't do any of that, and the SEC can and will find you.
They got Martha Stewart. They'll get you too.
They got Al Capone. Al Capone did not get got for dealing drugs. He got for not paying taxes.
Topic number 2 comes from Vice. Headline reads, hackers tried to backdoor code used by 80% of all websites. I read the article and obviously did not really absorb all of it because it's technical, it's difficult. When they say that hackers tried to get around and take advantage of 80% of websites on the internet, what does that mean?
It means that PHP is a very good and very popular programming language. It's wonderful. It gets a bad rap. There's a reason it's used on 80% of the websites.
Yeah, it's used on 80% of the websites because of WordPress. Are you advocating for WordPress right now?
WordPress, for what it does, it's fine. It's absolutely fine.
We use WordPress for purely like an internet banner. And I think that's one of the keys is 80% of the internet, thankfully, does not run on PHP. That, God forbid, that alternative reality ever exists. 80% of the websites on the internet, a bunch of which are crap, are running on default WordPress and PHP. And probably like, what was that stupid Google thing that they bought? Blogosphere? Blogalog?
Blogger,
yeah.
Blogger, yeah.
So,
I like Blogalog better.
Yeah. Blogalog.com for all your blog logs.
I'm going to register Blogalog.
So yeah, Nikki, PHP is widely used. PHP has a bad reputation historically, I will say. for being horrible, and they are supposedly less horrible now. However, PHP had their GitHub or Git taken over, and someone, presumably Russian, tried to inject backdoors into PHP. Thankfully, the backdoors were written in PHP, so they wouldn't have worked anyway.
How dare you? How dare you? Most of what Steve said is correct, except that PHP is a wonderful platform and wonderful language to use. So the implication of this was that if they had managed to get this backdoor in, you then download the latest version of PHP and it would have this backdoor, and then therefore your website would have this backdoor in. So luckily they did not get through. What I found interesting and kind of funny was that they used the keys to, I've never been able to pronounce his name correctly, but Rasmus Lerdorf, he's the guy that invented PHP, and they used like his own key to get in, which I thought was pretty hilarious.
That's rough.
It's rough, yeah.
So someone protect the guy that invented Python real quick. Let's lock his keys up.
Yeah. So their response, PHP's response, was declare that their whole Git server was polluted, and they just trashed it, moved it, I think, over to GitHub, which I think is the safest response here in all of this. So moral of this lesson, if you're going to run your own server for any reason, you gotta look out for this stuff.
I think this is actually a concerning story for third-party risk, because WordPress was in no way broken into in the story. But if you backdoor PHP, you automatically backdoor every platform built on PHP. And WordPress is the most widely used platform on the internet. It's astronomical how many sites are running on WordPress. So you have to be very concerned about your third-party risk, and you have to monitor it very carefully. And hopefully WordPress has a very hopefully they have a change management process that reviews any third-party code that before it goes into WordPress, because that could have been very bad if 80% of the websites on the internet which are running on WordPress, if they suddenly have this PHP backdoor, that'd be horrible.
Yeah, very true. WordPress is originally a blogging platform, but it has just expanded into general content management. And it's back in the day, along with PHP, I would have said, yeah, WordPress is probably compromised too. They don't know what they're doing, but these days, WordPress is also a very well-managed project.
We use it not because we want to, but out of necessity. If you want to run a efficient, well-regulated website to produce content, even if you're entirely business to business like we are, you got to do it on WordPress. There's very few alternatives.
It's very easy to, yeah.
So nothing serious or crazy damaging happened here. They're just basically outlining a situation a lot like the meteor from Armageddon, where it was just this close to being very bad.
Bruce Willis went up there and nuked that asteroid.
Well, I would say this is similar to SolarWinds, except for they caught it with PHP. They didn't catch it with SolarWinds.
Yeah, that's actually a very, very good analogy. This could have been very, very bad and very disastrous.
Bourbon break. So this week's bourbon, it's a fun one. So this is a new bourbon and new distiller. It's called Still Austin. It's right here in the heart of Texas, in Austin, Texas. I really like the label, pretty label. This bourbon's actually called The Musician. What I like about this bourbon, it is a straight bourbon whiskey, and it is a certified Texas whiskey. I think it's the first one we've ever had on the show. Let me show you a little bit more about Still Austin. So I I remember Still Austin when they first opened up. I think they've been around for 2 to 4 years. It's not been a long time. They make this straight bourbon whiskey. They make a gin, and I think that's pretty much it. I would like to do a Bourbon and Breaches from Still Austin. It is pretty close to where we are. It's just in South Austin, and it looks like a beautiful spot. It's actually near St. Elmo's Brewing Company. So we've got, they got a high rye, they got a new make, they got different bourbons, nice copper still. So looks like a fun time. And if you don't like their bourbons and whiskeys and whatnot, you can go over to St. Elmo's and grab a beer. We are with our friends at Breaking Bourbon. They did a review of this. So it is only aged 2 years. That's the minimum needed to call this a straight bourbon. And I believe that's also the minimum needed to call this a straight Texas whiskey. And I've been drinking this so far, and I feel like you can really tell that. As opposed to something like an Early Times or any of the others we feature on the show that have been aged anywhere from 4 to 7 years. This is only 2. Now, granted, it's a new producer, so I'll cut them some slack, but I would like to see this as a 4-year, 6-year. I'd like to see them age this for longer. Also, MSRP of 45, that's not what I paid for it. I think I paid quite a bit lower than that. But I would also like to see a lower MSRP. I don't get anything terribly distinct from this bourbon. On the nose, it's pretty mild. I get a little bit of maybe cinnamon or spice. I actually get a little bit of smokiness on the nose. And I'm getting some heat. I'm getting some sweetness. I'm getting some corn. And I would disagree with I actually disagree with most of these tasting notes. I'm getting a very short finish. As soon as it leaves my mouth, I don't taste it anymore. So, this is a fun one. If you're here in Austin, I actually wanted to try this one. And I wanted to go to the location. So maybe sometime in the future, we'll go and try all the different bourbons and gins and whatnot. So I'd recommend it. It's fun. But in terms of the taste, the texture, the palate, the finish, it's certainly not a double gold winner as of yet. I do appreciate that it is distilled and bottled by them. This is not sourced. It's very easy for someone to come into town, buy some barrels, source the bourbon, and then just sell it, right? I appreciate they've put in the effort, and who knows how good this will be in 10 years, right? I'm probably tasting one of their first year's worth of batches. So I look forward to seeing how they improve. You have to consider when we drink something like Makers, they've got what, 4 decades on them, 5, 6, something like that.
Well, that's your point about the price tag. It's very difficult to pay the maker's price tag or higher for someone's DIY project, in its 2nd or 3rd year.
Yeah, much higher. They probably make vast majority of their profits from people that go to their tasting room because it's a good location, get drunk, and then buy a few bottles. So, and that's the end of our bourbon break.
Topic number 3 we'll be covering comes from Bleeping Computer. Headline reads, Ransomware admin is refunding victims their ransom payments. After recently announcing the end of the operation, the administrator of Ziggy Ransomware is now stating that they will give the money back. Kind of a good feel story, I guess. There are a couple of mentions of not believing that this is for goodwill, that there are other things happening that are making them act this way. Based on what you guys read, what do you guys think?
I don't know. How would you feel if somebody robbed your house and then dropped all your stuff back by the curb? That's not a feel good story to me.
Just on the front yard.
It's all scattered everywhere.
It's weird. You don't successfully infiltrate and then hold someone for ransom and then have them pay and then return their money. So you just don't do that. So I have a theory. There've been a few ransomware gangs that have released the decryption keys. I think there's a ransomware Batman. And I think ransomware Batman has been breaking into ransomware gangs and holding them for ransom unless they release the people they've held for ransom. Batman.
I like that.
Ransomware Batman.
I think it's
The hero
ransomware
we
Batman.
need, the hero we don't deserve.
It's Jeff Bezos. He stepped down as CEO so he could be ransomware
He has
Batman.
so much free time now. That's great. Oh, I love that. Richest
So he
man
can give us
of the
back our money and we
world
could buy more stuff from Amazon.
by day.
Come on, guys.
By night, Uber hacker breaking into ransomware gangs.
Topic number 4 we'll be covering today is from Bank Info Security. Retailer Fatface pays $2 million ransom to Conti gang. Essentially, this retailer out of the UK got hit with the demand. Everything was frozen, and Conti said, "We want $8 million." And luckily, Fatface has insurance, but they have a negotiator with the insurance team as well. The negotiator said, "Hey, we're in a pandemic. Like, we don't have the same revenues we're making. Man. Like, cut us a break." Conti gang has their own negotiator that says, "Hey, we understand. Okay, we don't want to bankrupt you guys. We'll give you a discount that will basically level this all out." Fatface pays $2 million as ransom.
I look forward to the movie played by Liam Neeson as the negotiator.
Yeah, it's like the Dog Day Afternoon of ransomware.
Wow. Ransomware, they have their own negotiator. These are businesses. These are absolutely businesses, and this was this was like the buyer or the buy manager.
Let's just be clear that taking over and freezing somebody out of their own systems and DDoSing them and probably making backups of all their files and their entire user database is not exactly altruism to walk away from that for $2 million.
No. I mean, $2 million. The key here is that one, there's insurance now, right? Not just data breach insurance, but some sort of ransomware insurance that comes with a payout and a built-in negotiator. So like, kudos on the insurance industry for building whatever that package is. I don't know how they would ever justify that because I can't imagine that the premiums are $2 million. So I feel like someone got soaked there. And then kudos on, like, this is just a weird story. I'm very happy that Fatface, who I did not know was a retail brand until just now, but I'm very glad that Fatface found a way to get their systems back up and running.
So one funny thing about this we haven't discussed is that the initial press on this ransomware was how Fatface bungled the messaging, and that's because they sent out an email that said the subject line was like strictly private and confidential, and people took that as you want us to shut up even though you stole you had your information stolen. So yeah, that probably was not good messaging. It was probably done by someone from legal marketing and they weren't thinking, but it had severe consequences on the initial press of this.
Well, I mean, Yes, but also it's very difficult to have a sense of humor because people don't have a sense of humor about this stuff. You know, what I mean, if your subject line is "oops," you know, you're going to get a similar reaction. And then if you say, "Well, sorry, we messed up. Here's the limit of the exposure, and we'll give you ID theft protection or something like that," you know, or free credit checks for a year, then you're just doing what everybody else does. So it's
I mean,
very it's a very difficult audience to please.
Yeah, yeah. If they just said that, but they said strictly private and confidential, and that was spun as Fatface wants us to shut up about this. We're the victims here, and they want us to shut up.
Yeah, that it was a silly subject for that email. I think someone said it was like auto flagged by Office or something, or that's how they tagged it internally. Regardless, they should have used the standard "we've been breached" template, and it's sad that one of those exists because that's the day and age we live in, where you can standardize your "I've been breached" response. Is there a company that does that? Because I feel like there needs to be a special PR company for specifically when you've been breached. Because we've covered a lot of ways not to handle that event, right? Like, don't lie about it, don't deny it, don't not file with the proper agencies, and then don't say, please keep this confidential, even though we've not kept your information confidential.
You know who went the old-fashioned way? Luby's. Luby's information systems affected by a cybersecurity incident, which is as old-fashioned as it can sound, given that this is a modern problem. So we're looking at the SEC's post, the official disclosure, basically just not saying much, but saying enough to alarm anybody who's over the age of 65 and taking advantage of the discounts. What do you guys think about this breach? Does it affect you?
So one weird thing about this breach is that we're first hearing about it from their SEC 8K, which is similar to the SEC 10K, which is a quarterly report that public companies have to file. It's weird for a breach to first show up in the 8K. I think it's the first time I've ever seen it. Usually in like the 8K or the 10K, you see like, internal initiatives and plans for intellectual property and profit and loss. And like, you can learn a lot about what the company is going to do strategically, but usually not a data breach. That it's weird. And it makes me wonder how the 8K was the first thing that we're learning about this. And like you said, Nikki, they've disclosed very few details. Legally, they should have to disclose details to various state governments, but who knows when they're going to do that.
Well, you don't know if it's a data breach. What if they just had the key to the little cashier that they use?
It just says cybersecurity incident in the report. Yeah.
Yeah. So the what could have played into this is that Luby's was sold to a liquidator at the end of last year. So who knows how much longer they'll still be around, and maybe the current owners are just like, screw it, we're just going to do the bare minimum here because this brand will not be around soon, and we're just going to close off all the restaurants. So yeah, there's confounding interest here going on. So not sure what's happening with that.
Yeah, that liquidator may be in for a rude awakening because there's actually fines and fees for not doing what you're supposed to do. So if they don't follow all the proper guidance, then they may end up owing money on this deal.
Yeah, but worst case scenario is that customer data was leaked. We don't know if that's true. And like we joked around, I mean, these are primarily their primary clientele are senior citizens. So worst case scenario, you've just opened up a lot of senior citizens, a vulnerable population to further cybercrime.
Yeah, the senior citizens are a target for a number of reasons. You can steal their Social Security You can steal any government benefits. You could change their Medicare. Is it care or
Medicare.
Cade?
Yeah, Medicaid.
Medicaid. You can change their Medicaid and commit medical fraud. So senior citizens are and then of course cybercrime and senior citizens don't really mix, right? The senior citizens don't have a lot of tech savviness to deal with it. So yeah, they're a top target population, an ideal population for cyber criminals. So this could be a very concerning data breach if it's a data breach. Even if it's just financials, right? Even if it's similar to the target breach where it was something at the register that was recording, credit cards and debit cards, that's still highly concerning because you think of who's not going to check their credit card, debit card statements terribly close. It's probably the senior citizen group.
But hey, pour one out for Luby's. It's chicken fried steak and the Luann platter.
The Luann platter.
I feel like
Yep.
Shoes spent far too much time at Luby's.
I have, you know what? I went to Luby's a lot when I lived in Austin, and I am not going to apologize for
I
it.
feel like the whichever ransomware gang hit them should send me a $4 check on my birthday.
Yeah, I think one question I'd like to ask, I guess, before we wrap this up is older people.
Oh, this is
that
going
are
to be good.
retired.
This is going to be good.
Hold
Night,
on,
everybody.
The gears are turning. Older folks that are retired and have done their job their entire life, did the right thing. They saved, they invested, they were smart, they were savvy. Now, are they just the perfect target for anyone who is any hacker that's like, well, this is a susceptible demographic because they're not checking their statements. They're not really good about using the internet in a cyber secure way. If I were to do whatever number of scams on them, they likely wouldn't even see it happening. They wouldn't know. And how long can it go? Is it feasible that these are being thought of at this moment? Are they happening? And if there's anybody who has older people in their families that they look after, that they want to take care of, is it something they should worry about?
Yes.
Fair
So we've attempted to work with the AARP several times, precisely because the older generation typically has more wealth and less technical capability than the younger generations, right? So they're going to be a higher target. We'll continue to keep working with AARP. We'll eventually strike some deal with them, but the AARP is incredibly concerned about technology-based attacks against the older generation. The number one item on their list this last go around was robo-dialers, right? And robo-scams and building systems that can, using AI and machine learning, automatically filter out those types of scams. So, and everyone gets those types of scams, but I think anyone on this video cast doesn't understand how targeted the older generation is for those types of scams. I think robocalls are explicitly for the Meemaws and Peepaws of the world. And so we want to work with them because it's highly unlikely that the older generation understands how exposed they are. It's highly unlikely they're using a password manager. So account takeover is going to be incredibly common. And then all the damages that could happen with account takeover. The main line of defense against those damages is multi-factor, which is usually not turned on. So yeah, there's a lot of risk with the older generation. not just in the US, but the older generation worldwide, because account takeover is going gangbusters and they aren't prepared for it.
Yeah, I never realized that there would be. I mean, I guess because they're just overlooked. You know, like they now all have their jitterbug phones that have internet access, but unfortunately, that has access to everything that has their money in it too. So that I never thought about that before today. That
I
those
don't
folks-
I don't know a single old person who doesn't have at least one Apple product. So you say jitterbug, but I think iPhone has good penetration. And it's going to be very easy to sign up for apps on the iPhone, but not be aware of the risks. This has been an episode of Bourbon and Data Breaches. If you like what you saw today, please like, comment, and subscribe. If you didn't like what you saw today, argue with the first people and also like, comment, and subscribe. If you have bourbons or breaches you'd like us to feature on the show, you can email us at contact@hacknotice.com. Until next time.